Good morning. We are jumping back into the Old Testament, starting with the book of Isaiah. This is a collection of prophecy. In this, we see many themes. There's a theme of love, judgment, punishment, redemption, and they're all woven throughout the visions and the prophecies and the word of the Lord that Isaiah speaks to the people of Israel and to the nations around Israel. Isaiah, like all prophets, is not really like telling the future or giving a puzzle about what's coming to figure out. Their main objective, their main goal is to call the people of Israel, to call the Lord's people back into a faithful life, back to an obedient life, and back to a life of worship, back to the path or the road or the way the Lord is calling them to. In Isaiah, the people have strayed far from where the Lord wants them. And Isaiah is sent to call them home, to bring them back into the right relationship with the Lord. The desire of the Lord is not to utterly destroy the people of Israel. Isaiah is a tough book. Not as tough as Jeremiah, as we'll see next week, but it's a tough book. And the Lord is not completely rejecting his people. Instead, he wants to give them a place of rest. Listen to what this passage has to say about that. Isaiah 28, starting in verse 9. Who is he trying to teach? To whom is he explaining his message? To children weaned from their milk? To those who have taken from the breast? For it is, do this, do that, a rule for this, a rule for that, a little here and a little there. Very well then, with foreign lips and strange tongues, God will speak to his people. To whom he said, this is the resting place. Let the weary rest. And this is the place of repose. But they would not listen. So then the word of the Lord to them will become, do this, do that, a rule for this, a rule for that, a little here and a little there. So that as they go, they will fall backward. They will be injured and snared and captured. As you can see, they took this message of rest and turned it into even more work. A message of hope and rest got corrupted by the people. No longer did they hear rest or repose or take a break, but this message was one of more rules, more this, more that. And these made the people even more weary. No longer was it a message of hope, but it was a message of the same old drudgery. Isaiah's words, remember, are not directed at unbelievers in this case. They're not directed at the nations around the people of Israel. No, Isaiah's words, the Lord's words, are directed at the people of Israel. They are directed at the people who are supposed to be the believers in the Lord. And in many ways, they're directed at us as modern believers as well. As followers of Jesus, we sometimes misunderstand the word of the Lord. As followers of Jesus, we have a habit of turning a message of rest into a message of labor. We're turning a message of grace into a message of earning. We have a tendency of turning a message of love and acceptance into one of get your life straight, then the Lord will love you. Now, the Lord does have rules, guidelines, and he has a path that he wants us and he wanted the people of Israel to follow. As modern believers, the guidelines or the rules or the path we're following is when we look at the life of Jesus and we see, how did he live? And when Jesus is asked, what is the greatest commandment? What is the biggest rule? The one thing that I have to do to be right with the Lord? And he gives a simple but very deep answer. And that answer is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And then he goes on. He's got this, there's a second one that's also very important that you need to keep a hold of. And that's love your neighbor as yourself. This life of love is a life of rest and freedom. It's not a life of nitpicky rules that make things more difficult that way. It's not necessarily an easy life because we have to decide how are we showing love to our neighbors? How are we loving other people like we love ourselves? But it is a life that is better. A life that is not a rules-based life, but a love-based life. If you have strayed from the life the Lord has called us to, listen to the message of Isaiah. It is a message of warning for them and a message of warning for us. There is judgment in the Lord, but there is also love and redemption. There's always like a stump left over or a shoot that comes out. The Lord does not completely cut off his people, and the Lord does not completely cut us off either. There's always a way back. Isaiah's message for us is to be faithful and embrace the Lord's love for us and his people and the people around us. If you found this helpful, if you found this encouraging, please feel free to share it with anyone you know who needs to hear this challenging and encouraging message from the book of Isaiah. Before you go, I got two more things. First, if you love coffee, I love coffee. If you want to help me by buying me a cup of coffee, feel free. There's a link in the description down below. Also, don't forget to do the YouTube things. You click over here to like the video. There's a bell somewhere down here. You can ring that so you get notifications of upcoming videos. Click up here to watch 2 weeks ago, the video on Acts, and you click down here to subscribe to the channel. And as always, I hope and I pray that you have a blessed week.